Welcome to another episode of Start the Week with Wisdom. I'm your host, Bridget Burns with the University Innovation Alliance.
And I'm Sara, Custer, Editor-in-Chief at Inside Higher Ed.
Each week, we bring you a short, uplifting interview with typically a sitting college president or chancellor to inspire you in the week ahead. And this is certainly going to scratch that itch for you in terms of inspiration and hope and perspective, and from a leader who has experience all around a range of sectors. So that's why we call it Start the Week with Wisdom.
And Weekly Wisdom is sponsored by Mainstay, whose mission is to provide scalable, personalized communication strategies, helping campuses engage students proactively. Learn more at mainstay.com.
This show is also broadcast on the Innovating Together podcast, which is sponsored by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and we're always grateful for their generous support. So I would do a drum roll to bring our guest on. I will bring her onto the stage. Welcome. I want to, for those of you at home, you may recognize our guest. Today's guest is someone who I've had the privilege of knowing throughout her remarkable work in higher education, but she's gone far beyond. And she's actually an author who has just written and is about to release her very first book. And so we're going to talk about that. It is called Made for More. And her name is Dr. DeAngela Burns-Wallace. And she is led from a variety of spaces. She has an incredibly impressive career. I met her at the University of Kansas, but she had already been a diplomat. She is on the board at Stanford University. She is president of the Kauffman Foundation, but she has also worked as, at the time, he was just wrapping up a chapter as essentially the COO for the state of Kansas, and has done just so many other things along the way. So I'm just so excited because a book of this substance coming from someone who has had such wide experience and substance it can be quite profound. So welcome, Dr. DeAngela Burns-Wallace.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Sara, for having me. I'm excited to join you all again. UIA and Inside Higher Ed, you all are kind of near and dear to my heart. And while I'm not in higher ed anymore, the work that we do works very in parallel with education and higher ed. So it's good to be here and see you all today.
So I first want to just hear, first off, you wrote a book. That's huge. You know how many people say they're going to do that and don't do it? So you actually did it, and you actually can speak with experience to those who dream about it. But I'm just wondering, can you just reflect on, you're about to launch the book. It comes out March 10th. Yes. What is this moment like for you? How are you feeling about this huge effort that you worked for years, I assume, and now it's here?
Yeah. So what I will say is that it's almost like that, like, oh my goodness, it's here, right? I think like many others, particularly in higher ed, you know that you have a book in you. We just do, right? We're in higher education. We see the work. We know the work. You want to share the knowledge. But I have to tell you, like sitting here now and knowing that we are a few days from the launch of the book, I'm so excited just to share the journey, to share the lessons that were shared with me, with others. And so it's fun, it's exciting, but it's also daunting, but really excited to see how people enjoy the journey.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you
so much. It's hugely impressive. And having had a sneak peek of it, I'm sure a lot of people will find it inspiring and relatable. And you told us a little bit about how you first sat down to write this, and you were really writing it as like a leadership book. And these are 10 leadership tenets that I would communicate to everybody. But then your editor was like, let's go a little bit deeper. Can you explain to us a little bit about how, like, your journey of coming to communicate these lessons with your readers?
Yeah. So, again, as we sit in our seats, you learn a lot of things. People impart things to you. And as you build that next generation of leader, as you build your own team, you want to impart different ideas, things that you have gathered along the way. So I started this as these are leadership lessons, things that I have learned, tried, tested, failed. And I just kept writing. And my editor, as she was working with me, she said, DeAngela, I think this is a memoir. I was like, no, I'm not that person. I'm not famous. Like, who's going to buy my memoir? Like, I'm not Viola Davis or, And so she said, I think it is. So we tested it. It was what you do when you're writing a book. You get so far along, about halfway, and you test chapters, which I didn't know. And so the testers came back and each of them said, this is great, but what happened after this? And then how did she get there? And I would have loved to see like her origin story. And I laughed because I was like, I didn't even know I had an origin story. And so it really did turn into, I was kicking and screaming, but a memoir. But I call it a leadership memoir because I still try to weave those leadership lessons through the stories that my grandmother taught me, my parents taught me, my faculty along the way, mentors, bosses taught me. And it did end up being a memoir, walking back through kind of different stages and phases of my life. But I'm very appreciative of those that kind of leaned in and pushed me to say, like, my story is as strong as your story. And I hope people see their story and their journey in mine, an everyday story, but really working to have impact on those that we serve.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you didn't want it to be like that you were surprised by that. Like, honestly, because I know about your career, right? Like whether it's, essentially needing to run the operations and like administration for the state of Kansas, or you were kind of, and, in the world that I knew you were kind of very much running student success and strategy and innovation at University of Kansas. And then but then now running this major national foundation and then also being a diplomat, like, of course people would want a book about your journey. That like your journey is way more interesting. Do you know how many non-interesting journeys get written into books? Like, I mean, there's an arc that's like, there's some that don't even have an arc, right? And yet like you have a very rich and like complex story. So I think that's the part that's surprising me, is that you couldn't see how interesting and how unusual that would, and how much people would be hungry for that.
Well, when you sit in a seat, and particularly, I don't know, like when we do our work, my entire career has been in service. And so it's always about the impact that you're having, right? And so I think when I stepped to the book, I really was like, leadership impact, particularly in this day and age. We got to build our leaders. We got to pour into our leaders. We got to identify that next generation of leaders, or inspire this current generation to keep going. And so it just never dawned on me that like my personal story would be that strong, but truly appreciative of those that push me, because that's what I do to others. So in this moment, I had to be pushed myself.
So I would also say your early leadership, one of the insights from the preview that you shared with us of the book, we were able to get the PDF and I otherwise really wanted the printed copy to trot it out for you. But you talked about how your early leadership training actually came from your family and church, from places that, and there's a bit of that in the book in terms of the really looking to other, like mining other parts of your life for where you're getting the perspective and the inspiration. So what I'm just wondering is, looking back, what specific kind of elements or practices from those environments shaped how you understand power, responsibility, and service?
Big questions. I would say, I opened the book talking about my grandmother, and my grandmother, we called her my granny, Aunt Peaches, was that individual in the community that if you needed your car payment, if you needed someone to take you to work that day, if you needed a meal, she made sure you received that, whether you were family or not by blood. But not only that, she then taught her children and her grandchildren that is how you show up. If you have more, if you sit in a seat where you control resources, where you have the ability to do more, then you should. And even if it's just a little bit more than the person next to you, you still need to be in that position to do so. And I think from those days and then moving through, I talk about growing up in the church and, on those days where once a month it was Youth Sunday, and they turned the church over to the youth from the moment you walked in the door to, the end of that service. And really not only trusted us to be able to deliver that service, but they also poured into us how to get stronger, what we were doing right. They celebrated our accomplishments, but they also made sure that we learned when we didn't do things quite right. Those lessons of holding people accountable, but also lifting them in different environments and just showing up are things that I try to really keep and pull through as I move through my career. And then, most importantly, I think at the core of what I learned as I was growing up and even in my early parts of my career was that, when you really think about the people that you work with, that you are responsible for, that you sit alongside of, that they really need to come first and that they need to be in that space of we have, responsibilities, we have work that we have to do, but you have to take care of the people. You have to see people. You have to understand how they are coming to the table. And if you do those things and you see those people, you can motivate them to do anything. You can lean into them and ask just about anything of them. But you also, as a leader, have to do it alongside them. But all of that comes from whether it was growing up in Kansas City or going away to college or those early years of internships of people pouring into me, lifting, pushing, challenging, but also holding me accountable as I was moving to and through each of those spaces. So that's a part of my journey.
Wow. That's an incredible life story. And I'm so pleased that your editor pushed you to share that with us, because that is so much. I mean, I'm sure all of the leadership lessons that you were wanting to share with us would have been wonderful as well. But whenever you really grounded in your personal story and how you were raised and the values that your family and the people that have mentored you throughout your life have instilled in you, that just makes it so much of a richer story. I also wanted to ask you, because one really fun, interesting, special detail in the book is that each chapter is named after a song. And you've got Lizzo in there, you've got James Cook, you've got Mary J. Blige, you've got Whitney Houston. Like, was that always part of the plan, or was that something that kind of came along throughout the writing process?
So I walk through life with what I say is a soundtrack playing in my head. So when I remember when I used to get ready for the state legislature and I knew I had, budget hearings and I'd be in front of that podium for 3 hours. That morning on the way down to Topeka from Kansas City, I had to, kind of hype myself up, right? Like I had to be ready for the fight. And so that might be a TI day or a ludicrous day, right?
Yeah.
And then on other days when I needed to deliver something else, I might throw on a little Yolanda Adams to smooth my soul, right?
Sure.
But I had always feel like there's like music. I grew up with it in my family. It takes you back to different moments when you hear that certain song. So Mary J. Blige is one of mine. Real Love was my, freshman year of college. And freshman year of college, you think you can do all things and you love the world. And Real Love just sets me in that remembering and just what that was, right?
Youth, the promise of youth.
Everything. And so when we started doing and kind of talking about, when I had to shift from the leadership lessons, because you can imagine when I was first writing the book, the chapters were like a lesson title, like No One Builds Alone or Lift as You Climb. And those still are part of those lessons that are there. But when I had to shift and remove those titles, I was like, okay, how do I title this? What is the word? And I kept talking about music, and I would play music when I was writing. And lyrics would hit me and I was like, oh, this is like, Hamilton, got to take, not gonna miss my shot. Like this is that chapter. And when I mentioned it to my editor, she said, well, go with it. She said, start making a list of different titles. She said, keep writing and make the list of the songs that just inspire you, the songs you love, pull a set of lyrics, a couple of lines and drop it. And I had this big Excel chart where I had like all this music and all of these things, and they just started to come together. Piece by piece by piece. And for me, I wanted it brings emotion, right? It brings that connectivity.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give people also a little bit of insight into that soundtrack that's playing in my head. And sometimes it can be a little ratchet. Yes, it really truly can. And I love it, right? Dr. Bridget Burns and Dr. DeAngela Burns-Wallace, we know there are moments where we need that. But I also love, like, Carrie Underwood is, I love her voice. I love her music. And I also think it just shows, again, who we are as people is never defined by one thing or one experience or one type. And sometimes, particularly in this day and age, we need to reemphasize that we walk in so many different ways. We show up in so many different ways. And our music is also one of those ways. So it was fun.
I love it. I want you to pull together like a Spotify playlist that is
It's
linked
on my Instagram, Dr.DeAngela. Follow
Perfect.
me. And we already did the playlist because
Good.
we were loving it. But what I also challenge people to do is add your playlist, right? If you had to think about the seasons of your life, like, what would be on your playlist?
Yeah.
Like, what would take you back to, growing up? What would take you back to, kind of that transition period where you were becoming an adult? And then as you sit in the season you are now, what is it that keeps you going? Right. And so that's the fun part. For me, it was music. For other people, it might be food, or it might be art, or those types of things. But when you write, and Bridget, you know this because we do a lot of speaking, kind of those large conferences. I know I can get on a stage with, 1,000 people in a room and pull them in and tell a story. But when you start writing, you're not quite sure that you can translate that into words or onto paper the same way you can deliver emotion or change, the intonations of your voice. And the music for me was a little bit of a connector because we not only titled each chapter, but there's about 4 or 5 lines from that song. So I hope when you start reading those, you hear the music, right? And you kind of stop and nod to it, and that it gives you a feeling as you walk into that chapter.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, okay, I should have played Mary J. Blige's Family Affair as your walk on, which I still stand that is the best walk on, because the intro, you hear that beat, and it's like, it doesn't matter who you are. I completely agree, because speaking is not actually about like storytelling. It's actually about connecting emotionally with an audience and like kind of meeting their needs, which is impossible to do if you can't see them. And to write is the audience is not there. And so it is. So, I mean, this is part of the reason why a lot of people, again, their dreams of writing books, but don't do. And that's why, because it is really hard and isolating and scary, and perfectionism would get in the way. So I'm just so proud of you for doing it. And also there's so many things I didn't know about you, learn. So I want to talk about being underestimated. So there are a lot of themes here, but one of them is very clear that at different points in your life, you've been underestimated, and you didn't let it turn it into anger. Whereas some people can let that become, but for you, it really was more like positive fuel. Like I think about your Stanford, you had an admissions counselor who didn't think you were going to get in, and then you get in, but you get a handwritten note from Stanford. Like that's a very, I can like feel that story. So how are you able to use being underestimated in a way that is positive as opposed to kind of toxic and negative?
Yeah. It ebbs and flows. I will say I'm gonna use I statements. Like, I won't say that I didn't have moments of anger, right? But a lot of times it probably manifested more as hurt, right? When you show up in spaces and you give of yourself and you work hard and you are achieving and you are helping people, when people begin to underestimate you, a lot of times it feels like a dig, right? Like, am I not valued, right? Is my work not valued? And then you start to pull away at like, and what's the underestimation about? Is there something in how I've shown up, what I've produced? And then it becomes some challenges where if you poke at that and you ask questions, it's not about the work that you did. It's not about how you produce. That is actually at that level of excellence and impact. And then you start asking questions. So is it about who I am? in many parts of my career, I was the youngest person in the room. And I talk about this when I did some work with the State Department when I was doing internships. And so by far 10, 12 years younger. So I was like, is it because I look young? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm Black? Like, what is it all three? Like, and in that moment, for me, that's the turnaround, because it wasn't about my work. It wasn't about how I showed up. So because it wasn't about that, I couldn't let it stop me. I wouldn't let it stop me. Because when someone turns that around, that underestimation, the reality is that's about them, not about you. That's about their issues. That's about them navigating whatever they have put in their head, whatever they have been taught, whatever they may have experienced. But if you internalize that, then you give it power. When you walk away from it, you take your power back. I don't know. And so I can't say that every time I just instantly turned it into like, yes. But by the end, when I worked through it, it wasn't about me. And then more importantly, and again, Bridget, I know as you've moved through different places and spaces, you've seen this. When we sit in leadership roles, when we do ascend to these seats where we are, I led 10 divisions at the University of Kansas when we were working on student success work. When I was at the state of Kansas as the Secretary of Administration, I had 2 cabinet agencies and 1,100 employees under my direct purview, and was responsible for all 35,000 state employees in the state of Kansas. When you sit in those roles and you actually control resources and policies, right? It is key that you actually ensure that that is not happening. We have the ability to make sure our policies are structured in such a way that people have, access to opportunities, to promotions, to, the resources that are available, particularly when you are leading an organization. You have the ability to challenge your talent and culture departments to do a policy audit to make sure we are looking at and people are moving to and through our organization in equitable ways, right? You have the ability to say, how are we distributing work? Who is doing what? Who is leading across our organization? And is it reflective of those of who we serve? So for me, when you take back that power, it also comes with responsibility. So as you continue to progress through your career, you have to remember what it felt like when you were underestimated, when you were blocked for access for no other reason than who you are, versus the work that you do and how you're supposed to show up. And then how do we as a leader ensure we're putting in policies, practices, procedures, and other leaders that ensure that we are not doing that to that next generation of leaders?
Wow. I mean, that's such an incredible way to fuel being underestimated into a positive thing, and really learning that lesson and making sure that you're not repeating those toxic practices for the people who are coming up behind you or who you're trying to work alongside and mentor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, your career it's so broad and impressive. You've gone from the Foreign Service to academia to state government and now to philanthropy. I mean, even any one of those individual areas that you've worked in is impressive. So the fact that this has all been one career for one incredible woman is stunning. But I'm curious if there was a specific part of how you approach that job or how you approach leadership in each one of those different sectors, and how maybe that changed along the way in the different positions that you were in.
Yeah. I think early on, I had the true privilege and pleasure. So for those who have had the opportunity or hopefully will grab the book, one of my mentors actually wrote the foreword to the book. It's we lost her literally 5 months after she finished the foreword to my book.
Wow.
And so she didn't see it fully published, but she actually read the final manuscript because she would not write the foreword until I gave her the full manuscript. And I appreciate her for that. But she was a mentor very early in my career as I was coming through the State Department. And one of the things that she really, really, really pushed with me was this idea that this is a journey. How you lead, how you show up, how you impact others' lives, particularly when you have a career of service, that it's not a destination. It's not about getting to this title, that it's not about getting to this moment, that it's a journey. And that in that journey on the other side, you have to be in a place where you will say and be able to look back and say, my legacy was intentional. I had impact here. I changed a life here. I changed my own life here, right? That intentionality, that understanding that it's a journey and that it's never about one singular destination really, for me, was critical. As I moved from seat to seat, I didn't have I'm going to be in this seat next, but I did walk into spaces and places and say, while I'm in this seat, I want to learn these things. I want to be exposed to these things. When I step out of this seat, I want to have this skill set for whatever is next. The other thing that she taught me was to ensure that when you walk through, that you took your blinders off. Many times we can say, okay, I want to be in this role next. And then we start to look at that role as the only opportunity for us. But when we do that, those around us join us and want to support us. So they also only see, how do we get from here to that next opportunity? When you take your blinders off and you allow yourself to be completely open, things will come into your purview that you didn't even know existed. When I got the call for the job as Secretary of Administration for Governor Laura Kelly to join her cabinet, I didn't apply for the job. I didn't know anyone in her administration. I had never met her. I voted for her, but later on, when I finally had the opportunity to ask her, like, how did you even get my name? And it was a colleague that worked at KU with me that had seen my work and had worked with her. And when she was building a cabinet, she said, I need transformative leaders that have demonstrated impact in the work that they do. She was like, I don't care even their, political affiliation, but that they are ready to do the work and will work and serve. And he said, I have somebody you should meet. And he gave her my name. When you keep yourself open and you do the work intentionally, you do not know who will carry your name into a room that you don't even know exists. That's a journey, not a destination. And that's powerful.
I love it. I feel like you're just like pearls. You're just
I'm trying.
So much gold, so much good stuff here.
So good.
I know that your time is limited because of it's very in demand, especially with the book coming out. I do hope that folks will follow the guidance and go to drdeangela.com. I think that the playlist is fire. I think that I'm waiting for my copy to arrive. But
we sent it out. It didn't make it. Give me 1 second.
Actually, I bought my own pre-ordered too, so I'm gonna have a copy to give someone.
Yes, please. Love it. And so it is, you see that Papa Green, I will tell you all, they tested so many different colors and I was like, oh no, not that one. Oh no, not that one. And then they sent me the green and I'm like, oh y'all, that's it. And I don't even know why, but the creative team was like, it's bold, it's endearing. I was like, yeah, pretty. Like, right. And then of course I'm a coordinated person. So I was like, ooh, all the things I can do with this green. I'm like, jackets, blazers.
Yeah, it's good. Your necklace already. I can see it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we just had so much fun with it. But I sent you a copy, Bridget. But I do hope that people will check it out. It's called Made for This. It is one of those things that is it was a labor of love, but it's also, again, we have to tell our stories. We have to share our stories. We have to, and be clear, we have to share the triumphs, because you can read people's bios and understand the triumphs, but you got to share the challenges. You got to share the failures. And when you do that, it makes the real difference. I don't know, like that's the part. And I just appreciate you all giving me an opportunity to share a little bit and to reconnect. Sara, it's been a pleasure to meet you. I still follow Inside Higher Ed. It is a critical piece of us understanding how we in philanthropy, we fund into college access and completion. We fund
Right.
into workforce and career development, as well as entrepreneurship here at the foundation. And so I always keep my ear to the ground, my eyes paying attention, so that we all know what's going on in our partner spaces and places. That network still continues to this day to feed so much of what we do in my day-to-day work. So thank you both just for opening up the conversation and engaging.
I'm just super excited because to know you is one thing. Obviously, I think you clearly are very humble and don't realize how many people would recommend you in other circles. So that's noted. I'm not in the least bit surprised, but more, I'm someone who I really like seeing other people thrive because it's super inspiring for me. I love seeing you hit your mark and hit out of the park because like I want that for you. And I'm especially so proud that you did something so difficult. Writing a book is so challenging and learning so much about you. Like I thought you were cool, but you're like layers and layers. And, but I think it's just really inspiring to see other people just nail it. And I feel like you're really nailing it. And it's so nice to see the impact that you're creating. So I'm super proud of you. And I will I'm personally accountability buddy, I'm getting the playlist. And I'm just super excited to have the book on my shelf because also I do a rainbow bookshelf everywhere I go. And do you know how hard it is to find a green book that is that color? It's actually quite rare. So so I'm pretty excited. Right here, I just have a piece of green paper because I needed to fill the spot. See,
I see that. So this will go, it'll fit very nicely right in that space.
It's perfect.
That is commitment to the rainbow bookshelf, Bridget. It's
doing all I can.
I didn't notice that because I actually thought it was back there because I was like, oh, I see the green. And I was like, oh, it didn't make it in time, but you will have it in hand, I am sure, within the next 24 hours. But it's pre-order is available. It's on Amazon and it's just, you can look me up by name or Made for This and it'll come right up. But just excited again for people to join the conversation. And I hope to then share pieces and parts of their journey because that's what it's all about. That's why we did much of the work in University Innovation Alliance. It was about bringing leaders together to share our journey around how we were helping our students be successful. And the only way we could do that was to actually share with each other what was working, what was not working, what were the models. And so I take that every day with me as the work that I'm doing now. Our vision for the work that we're doing here in and around the nation is economic mobility. But we want Kansas City to be a model for that. And those models then can be replicated. People can learn from those models, grow from those models, and those opportunities and that access continues to grow. So while I've hopped different sectors and been in many different places, my work at my core is access and opportunity, whether it's federal government, state government, higher education, or now philanthropy. So thank you. And to all my higher ed colleagues that are still out there in the trenches in the fight, keep doing the work. Education is at the core of everything we know is good about our country, where we are, and particularly where we're going.
All right. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you. Thank you so much to be a great co-host as always, Sara. And this is going to come out on Monday, which will be the day before the episode. And we will do a special second airing on the day that the book comes out as well. Which is the next day. So we will see you all next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.